What is femme fatale? It is a seductive woman who lures men into dangerous situations. For our film's opening scene, we set a slasher genre with a modern setting. After studying different horror characters, a common character I found was the sex appeal, which is a sensual woman. This was usually used to represent them as weak, so they are the first to be killed. Therefore, our film opening challenges this horror convention by representing a sensual yet empowered woman who subverts to the genre. However, the antagonist in our film opening relates to the slasher character whose main purpose is the death and torturing of the victims, for usually no reason. This conforms to the horror genre since our antagonist's aim is to kill men for a concealed reason without any hesitation. Which narrative does femme fatale represent? After extensive research, I have come to a conclusion that enigma is heavily used in the horror genre to create mystery and set a tense atmosphere for the audience as it introduces suspense. The most essential narrative technique used in horror is enigma codes, as it creates mystery and suspense which entices the audience and encourages them to continue watching. In our film opening, enigma codes are used by zooming in on the picture frames during the beginning, not revealing the antagonist's identity and the victim's possessions like the identification card and wallet covered in blood splatters. This creates mystery as to whom the men in the portraits are and how they relate to the antagonist, as well as who the antagonist is, which will convince them to continue watching the film in hopes to find out the antagonist's identity, which is inspired by Scream's narrative. Similarly, the victim's possessions splattered in the blood indicate that something dangerous has occurred to him, like being tortured or murdered, to the audience, which entices them to continue watching to find out what actually happened to him. The closure is later given to the audience once the camera zooms in on the door at the end with a shovel clank and screams echoing behind, letting the audience know some form of torturing is happening behind the door. By zooming in on the concealed door, it emphasizes the cruelty the man is facing currently behind closed doors in secret. Secrecy is also highlighted since the contents behind the door are not seen and only heard, suggesting that this is happening in secrets behind shut doors. As well, foreshadowing is introduced when showing the bloodied knife at the beginning and dirtied shovel, which indicates that the antagonist has just come back from torturing or murdering someone. This gives an idea to the audience of what the antagonist represents and their character, since it conforms to the slasher genre and highlights murder as well as torture through using femininity as a tool. What role did color have in La Femme Fatale? As seen in the film opening, the color red is often used to conform to the horror genre since it conveys danger and slaughter. This particularly conforms to the subgenre due to the illicit nature of blood, gore, and murder present in this genre. From my Conjuring research analysis, I concluded that red was often used to inject a sense of heavy danger to the audience. For instance, the antagonist transitions her costume by adding a red coat to the full black outfit. By wearing the red coat, it represents that she is about to do something dangerous, which is later confirmed when she murders the victim after wearing the coat. Likewise, the feminine props consisting of perfume, makeup, nail polish, and the dress had a consistent red color throughout, since the color red is also known for representing femininity, especially when highlighting empowered women, because most women are killed first in slasher horror films known as the sex appeal. Therefore, the use of the color red allows the opening to represent feminine power when they are usually represented as weak or killed in most horror films. So having a female killer subverts the genre as well as the subgenre of slasher, because most women are killed first in slasher horror films known as the sex appeal. Despite most of the feminine props consisting of the color red, some of the makeup and the heels are black to emphasize the power of the antagonist, as heels are feminine yet black. So it shows elegance and sensuality, which accentuates the feminine power in the opening scene. Including the feminine props being black is the antagonist's costume at the beginning of the opening scene, which shows the antagonist walking while wearing black boots, a black hoodie, and black jeans. The black hoodie is not only a known costume that conforms to the horror genre due to it having a hood, which derives mystery and thrill as secrecy is introduced by having the hood up, but also wearing black connotes evil and the darkness surrounding the antagonist, which are traits that the character represents. Therefore, lets the audience know what cruelty to expect as it conforms to the horror genre. Furthermore, using black feminine props conforms to the slasher subgenre as well, since most women are represented as a sex appeal. This is where the first theory, binary oppositions, is introduced, since the colors black and red are complete opposites in terms of contrast and saturation. This visual binary opposition illustrates the contrast between the sensuality and power of the color red compared to the evilness and harshness that the black color conveys. Especially using the color red surrounding our antagonists, such as the red coat costume and feminine props, really accentuates the feminine power that the antagonist holds against the male victims. Cinematography used. This can be broken down into three main parts, beginning with shots. During my research analysis, I explored the film Silent Hill and its different technical elements. One cinematography element that stood out to me was the establishing shot at the beginning of the scene. In this shot, the audience is able to see the abandoned and isolated state of the lost land they are on. This captures the audience's attention as it establishes the setting and its creepiness. Therefore, wanted to replicate a similar effect in our opening scene. We began the film opening with an establishing shot to emphasize the night and secluded living room as no individuals are present. A spooky atmosphere is created as it generates an isolated state with no witnesses available to absorb the future horror that occurs. Similar to the shots, I was also inspired by my Conjuring analysis, where high and low angles are often used in contrast to emphasize the power imbalance between the victim and the villain. However, since our film's opening scene featured the villain only, we opted to use high angles on the victim's possessions to highlight the vulnerability and helpless state the victim is in. This is further emphasized with the blood splatters on the wallet and identification card, as it foreshadows the torture the victim is experiencing or will experience. As well, a Dutch angle is used when showing the victim's possessions to exhibit a confusing and disorientating effect to the audience. Oppositely, a slightly low angle is used when zooming in on the portraits of the man to communicate the importance of the victim in the middle and his significance later on, which is also a way to foreshadow that the villain wants to kill him. This proves the binary oppositions theory, since the opposite angle usage of high and low angles create a visual binary effect that entices the significance of some characters, as well as emphasize the vulnerability of others to communicate to the audience what each scene means. What camera movement really freaks out the audience? The zoom in. This steady yet long camera movement can really get on people's nerves, as it leaves them waiting on the edge of their seats, thrilled to find out what will happen. Not only did my Conjuring analysis use this technique, but also Scream as well. At the end, the camera zooms in at the door, paired with suspenseful music in the background to raise the tension for the audience. After maintaining the shot for an extended period of time, it makes the audience feel uneasy before the jump scare of the screams erupt and echo in the background as the horrific title appears on the faded out black screen to emphasize the cruelty the villain is inflicting onto the victim. This finally gives the audience closure after the enigma codes have been introduced, because the audience finally know the process of the villain. What editing methods did La Femme Fatale employ? Throughout the opening scene, a continuous yet slow-paced editing style is used to build anticipation before a jump scare or to highlight enigma. We can see this used in Scream, where slow-paced editing is present while the protagonist is on the phone to build excitement and suspense before introducing the antagonist. I decided to take this idea and replicate it onto the opening scene, which is most prevalent when zooming in on the portraits and washing the blood off of the hands. In this case, when the antagonist is washing blood off her hands, slow-paced editing allows the tense atmosphere to increase and keep the audience on edge, as it drags their worries and thoughts on, making them think of who she just killed and where or who did all that blood come from. What was the role of sound in La Femme Fatale's opening scene? What makes or breaks the atmosphere in a film? Sound. Throughout my research, eerie music, creepy dialogue, and tone of voice is heavily used to bring the overall spooky atmosphere together. However, in my film opening, there is no use of dialogue, which subverts to the horror genre, as many films rely on dialogue for creepy slang and chilling tone of voice. Instead, eerie music is the most prevalent in the film to create an uncomfortable ambience. Having no dialogue actually accentuates the creepy and horror element, as it signifies the isolation of the house, as well as the horrific actions the victim is experiencing. Similarly, Diegetic humming is used to create an uneasy factor since it is sung by a human yet no words are formally coming out. Although this practice is done by many of us on the daily, it is commonly seen and used in horror films because it compounds the audience's anxiety as the incidents unfold. As well, the original song the antagonist is humming is later used in the film to allow the audience to understand the link between the humming and the song. Since the song is sung by a female, it adds an element to the creepy yet feminine atmosphere of the film, which increases the feminine power surrounding the antagonists.